Welcome to chapter 9. In this chapter, we are going to meet our first and most important converb or gerund. That is the so-called converb or gerund in N. Which term of these you use, this depends on your linguistic background. But important is what it means. It refers to a non-finite verbal form, which is primarily used adverbially. So it is used in combination with another verb. So it's in some cases comparable with the ing form in English, like when you say that the little boy came crying or so. How did he come crying? Okay. First, we look at the formation, which depends on the conjugation class, and there are some peculiarities you have to pay attention to. But way more interesting and way more challenging than the formation is the usage. So first, we summarize, we go into way more detail in the long form video, the instructive forms in N that we have already seen sporadically in Mari in different shapes or forms at different stages, used with an N marking an adverbial form of some form, shape or form attached to adjectives, to nouns, to numbers, and also to verbal stems. That's what we actually got here. And the usages, we see how it is used like adverbially, denoting how somebody is doing something. We also see that sometimes the things that we denote them, like these modifications that we have in English, we would more likely just have two verbs here. Like, what are you doing? Sitting and eating. Literally, your Mari is saying is like, we are sitting, eating. Like, we are defining how we are sitting, eating, we are sitting. Or more critically, like taking a book in the library, I'm going home. In English, you'd clearly just use two sentences here. After taking the book in the library, I'll go home. Yeah, but this is a general trend that languages, the further to the east you go in Eurasia, the less they like to actually have two finite verbs with a conjunction in between. The more likely they just want to have some converb in between and say, taking the book, I go home. We also see how this converb is used in combination with modal verbs. For example, kertash, to be able to. If I want to say that I can come or I cannot come, it's meitolen kertam, meitolen kert, with critically the converb in N and not the infinitive. We look at how it is used in directional constructions. This is just based, this pertains to how directional constructions are expressed in Mari in general. We go into if you want to know what's happening with the squirrel, watch along from video. How in Mari, you basically, rather than saying that the squirrel jumped up the tree, you would say it jumping climbed the tree. And very importantly, the converbs in N are also used in a spectral construction, like if you want to take a verb love and want to turn into falling in love, you say love in place. What's up with that? Well, long form video explains that. We are meeting the comparative case in this chapter. We already saw the adverbs from used in reference to languages. When you have Tatar, Tatar, a Tatar, like a Tatar person, Tatarla in Tatar. It works similarly in Chuvash, and that's not a coincidence. In Chuvash, this la ending has some other functions too, in addition to these forming adverbs pertaining to languages. We have kunta, to here, kuntala, towards here in this direction. It's used to weaken a spatial reference of sorts. That works in Mari too. Tushko is here, tushkala is towards here, coming in this direction. In Chuvash, we can also have, like if we have a verb meaning bird, we can attach this la to it and be like a bird. He sings like a bird, he flies like a bird or whatnot, works in Mari too. Kayak, kayakla. And yeah, this is not a coincidence. This is just a borrowing of a case suffix with its wide range of usages from one language to another. Mari just borrowed the Chuvash la, and it does everything in Mari that it does in Chuvash, which is pretty cool. And yeah, here we see it in, by now you know the system. The arrangement of possessive suffixes and case suffixes. The comparative, it behaves more or less like the dative. I say more or less like the dative because there's less variation in the ordering of suffixes here, but it should also be noted it is less common for these suffixes to mix in the first place. I mean, you can say, he looks like my father or so, but it's not that often that you'd have a possessive suffix in combination with this comparative case suffix. As you might notice here, no more gray fields. You know all the grammatical cases by now. Congratulations. So we already in a previous lesson learned how numbers have short forms and long forms. So do some adjectives in Mari, specifically adjectives referring to colors. So if I say, what is this? I could say this is a red house. In this case, then red is Yoshkar. But if I want to say this house is what color, and then I say this house is red, then it's tidepert Yoshkarge. We have the long form Yoshkarge here rather than Yoshkar. Likewise, with white, we have Osh and Osho. And for green, we have Ujar and Ujarge. So depending on if something is used attributively or predicatively, short form or long form. The short forms are morphologically inert, and the short forms can also not be used as nouns. The long forms can. So if you are referring to, for example, you're talking about the Russian Civil War and you have the Reds, they are the Yoshkarge bloc. The whites, on the other hand, would be the Osho bloc. And if you're talking about a political party that calls itself the Greens in Mari, these would be the Ujarge bloc, the green ones. Here you see an overview of the most important color terms that have this duality of a short form and long forms. We have some other adjectives like koshar, kosharge, short, nuzhel, tender, that are not color terms that also have the same duality, but it is less systematically enforced in these cases. With the color terms, it's very systematically followed. And you've got to know it, and you've got to have competency of this if you want to talk about colors in Mari. We're going back to the comparative degree, like bigger, whiter, or whatnot. And we're now seeing what do we want to say if we want to say that something is bigger than X, longer than X, deeper than X. If we want to have an object of comparison, denoted in English than with than. Here in Mari, we use dech from. We'd say white, snow is whiter from paper. Critically though, if you have the object of comparison expressed like in this case, you don't actually need the comparative suffix rak. You can use it, but you don't have to. If you're just saying paper is white from snow, the comparison is already is salient just from the fact that you have marked an object of comparison. This is actually the original way of making comparisons in Mari. This is the traditional Finno-Ugric way. And in, for example, the Mordvin languages, this is done to today. So the suffix rak is a borrowing, a fairly recent borrowing from Turkic languages. Speaking of borrowings from Turkic languages, also the superlative degree n, the marker for this is borrowed from Tatar. So if we have poro, good, porak, better, en poro, it always precedes the adjective, the best. Yeah, and you can also use this in combination with adverbs if you are having degree comparative and superlative forms of adverbs. Words and word usage, what have we got? So we're looking at the words idalic and e, both meaning year, but idalic is more used as like the year as the abstract concept of a thing with four seasons, whereas e is used more in reference to one specific year. Kitsch and tilze, two words that we already, I think we already know, they both mean sun. So kitsch means sun, but day too. And tilze means moon or month. But there is no distinction between these concepts in Mari, the celestial body and the time unit designated by said celestial body. Shinchash, to sit down, shinchash, to sit. These verbs have the same infinitive, but are not the same because they belong to different conjugation classes. Shinchash is sitting down. Shinchash, shincham, is I sit down. Shinchem is I sit. So shich is like, hey, sit down. And if I say I'm already sitting, you'd say uje shinchem, second conjugation. Pay attention not to mix these up. Shulash, first conjugation, shulam, to cut, to slice, like kinam shul, cut bread. Shulash, second conjugation, to melt, lum shula. Here we don't have a connection between the two. It's just a coincidental homonymy of the infinitive forms, but here to try to make sure not to get them confused. Another homonymy is puash, to give, puash, to blow. Both second conjugation. They've just fallen together. Yeah. Molan, why, what we have, literally this is to what. It is what, mo with the dative suffix, but this can also be used to say why. The dative in Mari is, as is typical for the languages of the Volga-Kama region, used to denote the purpose of something to. Like if you're saying that I'm going to the well for water, you would say I'm going to the well to the water, with the water in the dative. So it's a function of that. So we then have what with the dative is why. Why aren't you coming? But you can also say, as in English, you can in colloquial speak also just use what to ask why. So like, why do you lie around and sleep so much? Like in colloquial English, you could also say, what are you lying around and sleeping for, basically? And Mari does this too. Urem, street. This is a general Russian thing, because Russian does this too. The word urem for street, like Russian ulica in Russian, also just means the outside. So if I say, Nunu uremeshte modet, they are playing in the street, literally. It could mean that they are playing like it's a street with not much traffic and they are playing football on the street, but it could also mean just outside. It's just the abstract concept of outside is uremeshte. Yeah, so the text, fortunately, Anush is feeling better and she is in the kindergarten and she's talking about the seasons of the year. And yeah, of course, there's some exercises to do on the topic, and as per usual, there is a song of the week. And this year, this week, our song of the week is something more folksy for once. Give me a second. I have lost my notes. Where are my notes? Ah, yeah. Kakshanser Umbalne Lombo. On the shores of the Kokshaga River, there is a bird cherry tree by Stanislav Shakirov, the quintessential Mari folk musician of our day and age, whom I would have seen live in concert if it wasn't for the bears. I think I discussed this in the long form video, but I'm not sure. If not, ask me if you ever meet me in person, what's up with the bears? Okay, see you next week.